And on a quick aside, induction versus LED, I have to say, giving credit to the DOE, that LEDs are held to a much higher standard. We all see L70 50,000 hours, which tells us that an LED luminaire is going to depreciate by about 30% at about 50,000 hours. L70 indicating the percentage of light remaining from the initial light, 50,000 hours, the point in hours where it should be at that 30% depreciation. Now, using this chart, which I think is very conservative, I don't think anyone would argue with these depreciation curves. There's always exceptions, but this covers more or less the main gambit. If we were to hold metal halide lamps to the same standard that we hold LEDs, metal halides would be rated at 5,000 hours. If you look, high pressure sodiums here would be rated at about 15,000 hours. Fluorescent would be rated at about 20, which is where it is. LED at about 50,000, it reaches its L70 point. And induction, the internal inductors, we're looking at maybe 62, 63,000 hours before it hits that L70 point. And the external inductors, you're looking at about 80, 85,000 hours when it reaches that L70 or 30% depreciation point. So even making all things equal, you can see you're going to get a longer L70 life out of either type of induction than you would over LED today. And I can't stress enough that this LED curve is pushing out further and further every year, so things will change. We've used here a scenario, it's a fictitious scenario. I picked Chicago because my buddy from Chicago is visiting us right now. And the labor rates can be pretty extraordinary in that area. And we broke down this simple payback for you using induction as an example, but we separated the labor because labor can vary vastly from one part of the country to another. I've met all too many end users and corporations who think that the labor is free because they're paying their maintenance people regardless. Frankly, I think that's a little short-sighted, but the customer is always right. So we've broken it down into part A, which is the energy savings, and then we'll quickly go through what we think is a very conservative labor number. So let's just go through the math here. In the first case, what we have are 470 lamps, metal halide lamps, 175 watts in this particular garage. The power on the 175 watt metal halide is 208 watts. The power draw for an 80 watt induction fixture, brand new induction fixture, is 80 watts. The difference between 208 and 80 is 128 watts. We're saving 128 watts per fixture. Now we have to look at what is our energy cost. And these days, you can't just sit down and say, okay, I pay X kilowatt hours, because it's all over the place. It's based on peak usage and demand and what other people in the community are doing at that moment. So the best that we can do these days is what's generally referred to as a blended rate. In this case, in Chicago, we have a blended rate of 0.098. They pay as low as 5 cents, as much as 18 cents during peak hours. But when you divide the total kilowatt hours for that particular month, 0.098 is a very real number. And for your case, if you're paying 12 and 15 cents, and I've heard horror stories in California and in New York where they're paying 22, 24 cents a kilowatt hour under certain circumstances, you plug in the number that makes sense for you. Obviously, the higher that number, the more you pay for electricity, the shorter the return on investment for an induction fixture replacing a metal halide fixture. So we've got a blended rate of, let's say, 0.09 cents, just under 10 cents. And let's say in this particular application, because it's a parking garage, it's a 24-hour-a-day application. These lamps are constantly running. So yes, I did pick a scenario where the payback would be the most favorable, but obviously this works regardless of the burn. And if it was a different application, that a 12-hour or an 8-hour burn, it would push that return on investment out, but you would still realize that return on investment well within the life cycle of the product. So let's continue down. So now we know when we do the math that we're paying $60.16 times our 0.098 blended rate times 8,760 hours. We are saving in energy per year over $50,000. Feel free to check my math there. Now the part B of this is bringing in the labor side, and we're using a $35 an hour number here. I am told that is very low for Chicago and New York. That might be very high for West Virginia and Georgia and Alabama. So you plug in your own number. And frankly speaking, if you pull out the entire maintenance saving equation, you still have over $50,000 in payback. But let's go through it. So $35 for labor and material. Number of lamps, we have 470 on the job. This is an assumption that we're going to change out about a third of them per year. Again, you can plug in the numbers that more accurately suit your application. So we have the $35 times the 157 fixtures is about $5,500. You take your $5,500 plus the over $50,000 that we saved in power, we're looking at a $57,000 payback. Assuming you pay $250 for that 80-watt induction fixture equal to 175 watts of metal halide as far as lumen output and light distribution, we're looking at a payback. And by the way, I happen to know that for an 80-watt surface mount garage lighter, $250 is also on the high side. We're looking at, folks, an approximate 2-year payback in this particular scenario. And again, I acknowledge that this scenario is just peachy perfect scenario, but just to keep it real, if it was a similar fixtures replacement, a similar wattage replacement in a different application that say ran 12 hours a day, this payback would push out to about 4 years. If it was 8 hours a day, this payback would push out to about 5 years. So, all well within the life cycle of these particular products. So we hope that you have a better understanding now of the different types of induction, the internal coil and the external coil, and how those types of fixtures can bring a tremendous and quick payback to your customers. Let us now take a minute to do a little bit of a commercial to share with you MaxLight's 2 debuting induction lines, total of 3 SKUs. We'll talk first about MaxLight's new 40 and 80 watt induction garage lighter. These surface mount fixtures are about a 15-inch round. They work obviously in garages, but do well in canopies and other applications. We are looking at a 100,000 hour life with an L70 at about 80+ thousand hours. The 40 watt version is 2,800 lumens, and the 80 watt version is 6,400 lumens. Photometrics are available, IES files for those of you who do your own layouts, and we are also very happy to be able to do a layout for you in your unique application, spacing criteria as well. In addition to the 2 garage/surface mount luminaires, MaxLight's very happy to introduce to you an induction light source floodlight luminaire. This is a 150 watt floodlight at about 12,000 lumens, 5,000 Kelvin. I should mention that both the garage lighters and the floodlight are universal voltage devices, so we pick up not just the 120 and the 277, but the oddball 208 and 240 in between. These fixtures are compatible with motion sensors and dusk to dawn or photo control switches. The IP rating on the floodlight is 65, so it's a true full flood. You can use it as an uplight. We are looking at about 80 lumens per watt on all of these induction fixtures, and if you're following LED technology and other light sources, you'll know that this is almost unprecedented. An 80 lumen per watt fixture is really about the best you're going to get out of LED today. Tomorrow we'll get much more, but today you just about meet this. But of course, the life cycle is tremendously different, and when you contact your local sales representative or your local regional sales manager and learn the pricing of these, I think you're going to be very pleased. MaxLight has come out of the gate with a very, very, very competitive pricing on these 3 fixtures, and as the line grows, we'll keep you posted. As usual, we really do appreciate your attendance joining us today. Can't say how pleased we are to be able to communicate with so many people so often, and we'll maintain throughout 2012 our monthly webinars. We will continue to try to make them valuable to you, make sure that we're bringing you good industry news information or technology information. We strive to be less of a commercial and more of a resource for you. Please let us know if we have let you down. Any feedback that you might have, we would love to hear from you. And please don't forget that all of these webinars are online at maxlight.com, can also be found at YouTube and other social media sites. Typically, we would leave the session open for a few minutes for folks to plug in any questions that they might have. And as usual, all of the attendees today will receive a copy of the presentation, as well as a list of all the questions that were asked during our time together today, as well as the answers. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.